The child sex abuse scandal at Penn State University has caused state lawmakers across the nation to look at laws designed to protect children and punish child predators. Now, the scandal has also caused colleges and universities to re-examine their programs. Motivational speaker and author and coach Tyrone White and Democratic State Representative Bill Patman of Cleveland are raising the public's awareness about child sex abuse and sexual abuse of student athletes right here in the state of Ohio. Joining me today to talk about child sex abuse and a new program called the Triangle of Trust are Coach Tyrone White and State Representative Bill Patman. Gentlemen, it is a pleasure having you on Focus. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
On a daily basis, we hear so many tragic stories about children who are victims of sexual abuse. The sexual abuse of children across the nation is raising the public's awareness on just how often children are sexually abused, but also how infrequently adults are reporting this abuse. Explain how often sexual assaults are occurring and share some of the startling statistics that are happening right here in our own state.
According to RAINN, which stands for the Rape, Assault, Incest National Network, every 2 minutes in this country someone is sexually assaulted. Every 2 minutes. And almost 50% of those children, 50% of those people that are assaulted are children. And of the children that are sexually assaulted, Bridget, less than 10% report. Less than 10%. So this is something we've really got to raise a red flag to, because we can't allow these things to happen underneath our noses and be passive. And so this is where I've been doing training on college campuses in the wake of what has happened at Penn State, because awareness is a missing factor. People don't know what they're looking at and then therefore how to respond.
And just in the U.S., I mean, the figures are startling. I mean, of all the reports that are coming out. Now, Coach Ty, you've developed an amazing program, and it's called the Triangle of Trust, regarding the roles of colleges with student athletes and their parents. Can you share with us how you came up with this program?
When I looked at what happened at Penn State, there's one question that nobody in the media is asking. Where were the parents? And I know where they were, uninformed. And so part of the Triangle of Trust that I've developed is to inform parents through training. You know, we can get through library systems wherever parents are bringing their kids, training coaching staff, administrators of athletic programs and summer camps, as well as the student athlete themselves and children.
Now, explain your relationship, how you both came together to more or less take this head on, this issue of sexual abuse.
Well, I actually was recruited by Coach Ty.
He's a tough recruiter, too.
And I'm actually a mentor for the Cleveland State basketball team as we speak. But on this particular issue, he said, Bill, you got to come down and take a look at the program, and I'm going to do one. And I did. I sat through it, and it moved me, admittedly. And so I went back and went to work and had the LSC, the people who grind out the laws in Columbus, to do just that, to put together a piece of legislation that if you're a state-supported school, then you should have some kind of training to try to prevent this. Because when I look back through my own memories as a young man, and I remember the trust and the worship that I had for the coaches and for the people who were involved in your life athletically. I spent time alone with coaches, and I was fortunate in those relationships that I was coached by some moral men who had integrity and weren't into that kind of thing. But the trust that I had with them when I was taken to a Big Ten school and say, maybe you can play on this football team one day, sat behind the bench and was just enamored with the whole thing. So there I can see where that one of those programs could easily be a wolf in sheep's clothing. So we want to do everything we can, especially as it relates to Coach Ty's program, and to keep colleges, places of sanctity, places of trust, out of the business of child abuse and sexual molestation.
We're going to take a break, but we'll have more when Focus on North Central Ohio continues. Welcome back to Focus on North Central Ohio. We're talking about a new program called the Triangle of Trust that is addressing the issues of child sexual abuse and athletics. I'm joined today with two wonderful guests. I have coach and motivational speaker, Coach Tyrone White, and State Representative Bill Patman of Cleveland. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on Focus and for talking about this issue. Can you explain the types of molesters and predators and how the victims are selected and how the victims are made to feel responsible?
Yes, that's a mouthful. Well, there are 5 different types of predators. And when you know their behaviors and you know how to recognize those behaviors, then you see what's going on right in front of your face. Because the misbelief that many people in the public have is that these folks are hiding behind bushes. And they're not. They're in plain view. It's the blind spot that's right in front of your face. So there are 5 types of predators. How they go about selecting their victims, they look for the weak and the vulnerable, whether it be on the internet or whether it be in the community, at shopping malls, or even within school districts. These perpetrator, predator, pedophiles, they know the MO of the best victim, someone that they can victimize and not get caught. And here's the other statistic for you, Bridget. By the time we catch a predator for the first time, and shared this with Representative Patton at a training we were at in Cleveland State, they have victimized on average 32 people. And
this is by the time
they're caught. 32 victims are out there. And they have no criminal record. So a background check by a Human Resources Department is not going to help you. A sexual offenders registry is not going to help you because that's post-conviction. And so we've got to teach people, parents, educators, how to see these things that may be happening right up underneath their nose, and most often it is.
Are you finding in these situations involving child sexual abuse that oftentimes females will report it more openly than males, because especially if they've been abused by another male, the embarrassment that's there, the stigma attached to that?
Most often females are faster to report. However, there's one thing that keeps females from reporting right away. They get involved emotionally. And that is one of the sticking points that can be different than a male victimized by another male. They are less apt to come forward because of the shame and embarrassment. I don't want to be labeled as a homosexual. And so there are varying reasons why we only see less than 10% actually come forward. So we got to teach parents how to get their children to talk to them, how to recognize when their child's behavior has changed, and how that may be associated with a predator in the midst. And most importantly, Bridget, we don't just want to talk about the problem after the fact. Through this training, we want to help stop it or significantly curb it. And Representative Patton, I can't take my hat off to him enough for being courageous in drafting this legislation that I think is going to make Ohio the beacon light for all states throughout the country in terms of what responsible legislators should do.
Well, talk a little bit about that.
Well, the legislation will mandate training for people, any people who are associated with youth programs at colleges that are state supported. So if we send our tax dollars there, we should be comfortable enough to know that everything has been done to prevent our child from being sexually molested or abused. This legislation will, when passed, and I believe it will be, will go a long way in helping that. But the stunning part of this, as you listen to the training as I did, when he said that collectors 32 victims before they're caught. Most of the time, that's exponential in that an abuser turns into an abuser. His abused victim becomes an abuser. So when you do the math on if the first, before you catch him 32 times the 32 folks who may very well end up being abusers, and that number just keeps going, it's a shocking statistic, and it gives alarm to us to get out and try to do something about it.
When we look at, to dovetail off what Representative Patton said, when we look at the exponential factor, we do know that there is a portion of those that have been victimized that they themselves become offenders. However, those that don't become offenders find it very difficult to engage in healthy relationships. And so they themselves are impacted, and those people that seek to be involved with them in a legitimate way are running into those barriers. And then these people that are becoming parents who have been victims sometimes pass on these dysfunctions to their children in terms of what's permissive and what shouldn't be. So it is exponential.
Yeah, and there's a term that's used oftentimes in psychology, and it's called the schizophrenic family, where you have someone who is schizophrenic, but it's not an hereditary disease, but the children of that person exhibit the same symptoms. And so exactly the same thing oftentimes happens in these sexual abuse cases. So it's important that we try to get out in front of, I can't even say get out in front of the curve. Mm-hmm. I can only say that we need to try to stop this from happening, because it's just a horrendous occurrence.
We're talking about saving the current generation from these horrendous things, and future generations, and the implications that carry long after the initial victim or victimization.
I think that one thing that people were so shocked about when the scandal broke at Penn State, that it had been going on for so long and no one said anything. But it's not just happening there. We probably have it happening at schools right here in Ohio, in our high schools.
Yes.
Are you shocked by that when you hear that the administration is aware of a sexual abuse case that's happened and no one has said anything, and the student has graduated and left, and the teacher may still be there, or the coach?
Yes, we're dealing with something right out of Los Angeles, the second largest school district in the nation, where they had an individual, a career-long teacher, 32 years, still in the classroom. They have right now evidence that he has victimized at least 23 children. And the belief is there's far greater number than that, but the others won't come forward because they're illegal immigrants. They're undocumented illegal aliens. And so the children that have legitimate status in this country, their parents don't, and so their parents don't want their children to tell. And these things that he did to these children, there's DNA evidence. He's on a $23 million bond. And then 2 weeks after he was caught, there was another teacher in the same school. And so what did the school superintendent, DZ, do? He shut the entire school down, sent all 150 staff members, janitors, kitchen aides, and teachers to another building so that they could be quarantined and an official investigation could happen with all of them to see if there were other people involved. And then they themselves now are taking ownership that this was happening right up underneath our noses, but our people didn't know what to do. So as Representative Patton said, training.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we've engaged in this country to some art form is cover-up. We busily try to hold our programs harmless, our performance harmless, the institutions in which we work harmless. And in this particular case, at least for me, it is an abomination to engage in that. What is more important, the reputation of a school district or the life of a child? What is more important, the reputation of a Penn State football game or what happened to those children? I submit to you that our society, it is not the offense that does us in, it is the cover-up. Because once you figure out something is going on, then you move to the point of justice, to righting wrongs and to hold people safe and hold other people responsible. We need to stop, as a group, covering up for programs, people, friends, and just tell the truth. Just say, I think there's something going on here, let's take a look. And it would go a long way in helping us overall, from children to financial institutions. Our country needs a lot of help in that area.
We're going to take another break, but we'll have more when Focus on North Central Ohio continues.